You already know how to create a document, so let's do it. Let's go to File, New. Remember that it's always faster using the Command N shortcut, or Control N if you are on Windows. Set the name for the project. It will be Moments. Set the dimensions. As I said in the previous section, I'm going to use always a square canvas of 1200 by 1200 pixels, resolution always 72, color mode RGB, and make sure artboards is unchecked and create. Now we have our blank and empty canvas. The first thing that we want to do is to paint the background color. To achieve that, we are going to use the Paint Bucket tool. Remember that the tools are on the Tools panel on the left, and the Paint Bucket is this, Paint Bucket icon. As you can see, some tools have a little triangle at the bottom right corner, which means that the tool has more options available for you to select. You can access those options clicking and holding over the icon, then you choose the tool you want. I'm telling you this because if, for example, you used the grading tool, you are not going to see the Paint Bucket on the Tools panel, and that's because the gradient is selected. Go to the gradient, click and hold, and select the Paint Bucket. Now, we need to fill the bucket with the color we want. As almost everything in Photoshop, you have different ways to do it. You can use the color panel on the right. If it is not active, you can go to Window, Color, and you can use the slider on the right to select the color hue and click and drag over the panel to adjust the saturation and brightness. This square shows the color you picked. You can find the same color square over the Tools panel on the left. Now, with the right color selected, just one click on the background and it fills all the layer with that color. Double click to close the color panel. Another way to select a color is clicking on the foreground color. The Eyedropper tool is selected and the color picker window pops up. In this window, you'll find the same slider and color area, but here you'll find some other interesting ways to define a color. Do you remember when we talked about color modes before? Remember RGB and CMYK? Look at this. RGB and CMYK are here because, as we learned, there are different ways to define the same color, but I want to talk about this number down here next to the hashtag. This is another way to define a color, and it's the most commonly used way to define colors on the web. It's an hexadecimal number that represents a color. When you click and drag here, it changes its values because every color has its own value. I'm teaching you this because we are going to use this number a lot for our projects. I'm going to show you one more way to pick a color using the Eyedropper tool. If you change the active project, notice that the foreground color remains. So, you can select the Eyedropper tool and click anywhere to select a color. You can also click and drag and you'll be selecting the color that is under the eyedropper. When the selection is done, go back to your project, select the Paint Bucket tool and click on the layer to paint with that color. There's one more thing that I want to teach you about the tools. As you can see, almost every tool has a character next to its name. And that is the shortcut to access that tool. For example, M selects the marquee tool, I, the eyedropper, V, the brush tool, T, the text tool, and so on. And you can also iterate through the options inside a tool holding down the Shift key and pressing the shortcut letter. For example, select the paint bucket tool with G, then press Shift and keep pressing G again to iterate on its options. I'm explaining you this because if you select the paint bucket tool, go to another project, and instead of selecting the eyedropper tool and then select the bucket again, you can directly press the I key, make one click to select the color, release the I key, and you are again on the paint bucket tool. One click and done. So now we are ready to add some text to our first design.